we are live.
All right, we are live with our Thursday evening town hall for the city of Oakland. Tonight, we are going to have a special focus on the city's budget. As a self-professed budget geek, I am very excited about this particular topic. But I do want to start off the way I start off every week with just a general update for everybody about what is going on with COVID-19. How is the city responding? How are we doing as a community? And I do want to say that today was kind of a special day when two groups of heroes in my heart got to recognize one another. And that is our incredible first responders who have been working tirelessly and in these very challenging conditions, took time out of their day to do a sirens and lights thank you and show of gratitude for all of our healthcare workers. And I hope you've seen some of the footage on social media of all the motor brigades and the lights going and the honking, but all of the healthcare workers coming out, taking a break in the sunshine in front of Sutter Alta Bates Hospital, in front of all the hospitals where people have been working so hard, to see the recognition that we all are showing in this moment of deep gratitude for our frontline workers. We also want to recognize that this is a time of loss for people, and our hearts and prayers go out to everyone who has lost someone to this or other diseases and is living in fear or uncertainty, because we know that COVID-19 is really shining a bright light on what is already horrible health disparities by race, by geography, and that is something that we are working very hard to fix. And just again, as a reminder, next week, our town hall is going to focus on the work of our Racial Disparities Task Force on COVID-19. We'll be highlighting some of the work that's already done to date, as well as hearing your ideas about what we can do to rapidly respond to ensure that we don't see health disparities, as well as think more long-term about the policy and legislative changes that need to be made so no one experiences these types of disparate impacts. But there's a lot of good news this week. And so why don't I start my slide presentation, because there are wonderful things happening in Oakland. First, just to give you a big picture of where we are. Alameda County, along with 5 other health officials from the Bay Area, announced a set of 6 factors that they will be tracking to determine when we can begin to loosen some of the restrictions, like shelter in place, like the types of businesses that are able to come back. And you see from this chart that was in the San Francisco Chronicle, a quick tracking of those 6 indicators. And I guess I think one thing to take away from this, with the exception of testing, and we're going to talk a lot more about testing in this update, with the exception of testing, Alameda County is actually doing pretty well. Our cases in the last 14 days are flat or decreased. You see a small decrease. Our hospitalizations are below 50%, and we also have had a flat or decreased rate of hospitalization, actually 11 fewer hospitalizations in the last 14 days during this period. Now, testing remains an issue, and we have great news this week. We opened our 3rd testing site in Oakland, in deep East Oakland, with 2 more to come, and I'll give some more details later. But we need more people to get tested. You should be getting tested if you are at all worried that you may have COVID-19, that you've had contact with someone, or you're vulnerable. You're over the age of 65, you have a health condition, or you work in any sort of industry outside the home. You can get a free test. And the more people that get tested, the more we can all feel safe about coming back to work. Contact tracing for Alameda County is good. We have the staff secured. PPE, our protective equipment, remains a little bit of a concern, although it is getting much better than it was at the beginning of the pandemic. So that's how we're doing in the 6 indicators. Next slide. Again, recognizing Oakland currently has identified 594 cases of COVID. We do know now from some tests that there are other unexplained deaths early on, and even within the last couple of months that could also be COVID, but we're not classified that way. Next slide. One great thing that happened this last week, we launched Operation Home Base. 67 beautiful brand new trailers donated to the city of Oakland by Governor Newsom, FEMA, and the state of California. And these are going to be used to keep our most vulnerable homeless residents off of the streets and in safety and comfort. Each of these trailers will house 2 individuals, so roughly 130 individuals will get to have safe, comfortable shelter. And we took the time and expense to actually connect each of these trailers to the sewer and water systems. So they each have a private bathroom and shower and kitchenette area inside. And so this is something that we've designed that can be utilized to shelter our unhoused residents long after the health emergency is over. But for now, we are being assisted by FEMA in getting our most vulnerable off of the streets and into safety and services. We also have made sure that housing navigation, in addition to healthcare support, is available on site, because we want to make sure that we don't return anyone to the streets once the health crisis is over, but rather we move them into permanent housing. That is how we are designing things, even in this moment of crisis, with an eye to permanent improvement. Next slide. Also this week, it was a very busy week, we launched the first, in fact, to our knowledge, it is the first, at least in the Bay Area, free walk-up COVID-19 testing site in the heart of Deep East Oakland, 99th and International, at the fabulous Ruth's Community Health Center, a very trusted partner in health in our community for a long time. And I am really excited to say that tomorrow they already have 250 reservations for tests. So people are getting the word that we need you to get tested. It's free. You don't need insurance. You don't need to be a citizen or have any sort of special documentation. We want everyone to get tested. More and more, we are seeing that this disease can be spread without symptoms. So if you are working outside of the house, please get tested, whether you have symptoms or not. If you are worried you might have COVID, get tested. The symptoms can be very mild, so please be sure to take advantage. We still have our other 2 testing sites up. Again, you can get an appointment for a test by going to oaklandca.gov/testing, or in Oakland, call 311. But these testing sites are available to anybody who lives or works anywhere in Alameda County. And so if you're outside of Oakland and your loved one, your friends need to take advantage of these testing centers, please have them call 510-615-5566. Get tested. All right, next slide. Oh, there's that criteria again. I can't say it enough. This is an expanded set of criteria for testing. We are testing just about anybody. If you want to test, if you think you need a test, don't hesitate. Call and get tested. Next slide. I was trying to be a little funny here with Gavin Newsom versus Dr. Erica Pond. There was a little bit, I think there's some confusion. Each week, our governor makes a lot of different announcements. And one of his announcements earlier this week was that tomorrow, Friday, we will move to phase 2 of the economic recovery. But know that every time he makes this announcement, he always recognizes that counties who want to be more cautious, who are more concerned about health impacts, and want to take a little bit more of a restrictive or cautious approach, their determinations actually win over the state's declarations. So in this particular battle of Governor Gavin Newsom versus Dr. Erica Pond, she is our Alameda County Health Officer, Dr. Pond wins. So just know that nothing in Alameda County is changing this Friday. We have restarted construction and certain outdoor businesses. We are hearing different things from our county, but just know that if you hear conflicting things from the governor versus the county generally wins. So stay informed by going to the county's website at acgov.org. Next slide. We are rolling out some more slow streets. I'm excited. One's right in my neighborhood, and that is the new slow street that goes just near Diamond Park all the way along a bunch of streets: Tiffin, Potomac, Laguna, Carmel, Coolidge, Morgan, Maple, Wisconsin, Patterson, Bayo, Steele, all the way through the Laurel District, and ends really close, just past where High hits MacArthur at Steele, just right above MacArthur. So that is a new long, slow street. Also ones on East 23rd, 26th Avenue, 25th Avenue, East 29th Street on Sheffield Avenue, which is in the Fruitvale District, and then Shafter, 48th Street, Webster Street, from Forest to MacArthur in North Oakland. So those are the new slow streets. Go to the website if you want to see a map of all of our slow streets. Super popular. I was out on one last night. A lot of happy families getting some safe, socially distanced exercise. Please keep your comments going. If you don't want a slow street, let us know. If you do want one, let us know. You know where to find us. Call the mayor's office, or you can always email oak311@oaklandca.gov. Next slide. And our resource of the week is the Great Plates Delivered program. So excited. One of the things that has just warmed my heart during this whole epidemic has been the Great Oakland Check-In. We have already trained, starting last Saturday, more than 300 volunteers who are making phone calls from the comfort of their homes to actually reach out to households throughout the city with a focus on our seniors. And in just the first 2 days, they signed up more than 260 seniors living alone who qualify for the Great Plates Delivered program. And that is for people who are having to isolate, or for seniors living alone that don't qualify for other federal food programs to actually get meals prepared by local restaurants. This is supporting our restaurants and our seniors, delivered right to their homes. If you don't want to wait for a call from one of our fabulous Great Oakland Check-In volunteers, you can call 211 to get signed up, or to have someone you love and care for signed up for this Great Plates Delivered program. All right, next slide. Oh, and just usually this time of year, it's Mother's Day coming up. I am so sad to miss the wonderful Oakland tradition of celebrating the Oakland Mother of the Year. For those of you who know me, my mother, Barbara Schaff, is a former Oakland Mother of the Year. This year, we are honoring Harriet Schlater. Harriet is the founder of Producers Associates. If you've ever had the joy of going to a musical at Woodminster Outdoor Amphitheater, you know Harriet's work, where she has given performing arts opportunities and, frankly, tons of joy to all of us for many, many years. I have gone to Woodminster for as long as I can remember and have known Harriet and her family, and it is wonderful that we are honoring Harriet Schlater as Oakland's Mother of the Year. If you ever get a chance, go to the Moricum Rose Garden off of Grand Avenue on Jean Street, and you will see the Walk of the Mothers that have plaques for every Mother of the Year that's been named in Oakland. It's a wonderful tradition. Congratulations, Harriet. And I think that's my last slide. I'm going to tell you how you can submit your questions and join our conversation. Again, we hope that you will ask us questions about the budget, but you are welcome to ask us whatever's on your mind. You can scan the QR code that's showing up, or if you're at a phone, you have access to text messaging. You can text 328-212-463. Text that number to 72855. If you're visiting us on a social media platform, there should be a link to click to. This is Thought Exchange. You can put in your question, your comment, and you can also rate the questions and comments of others so that we can actually answer and respond to the highest rated ones of the greatest public interest. So get those questions in now, or you can enter them as you hear the presentations. And don't worry, when the presentations are finished, we will give you one more reminder of how you can submit your questions and thoughts about Oakland's budget situation. Tonight, we are going to be joined by two wonderful people. First, our own finance chair, Lynette Gibson McElhaney, the City Council President for District 3, but also someone who has been leading our Finance and Management Committee and their work. And this is a time when her leadership has been more important than ever. Afterwards, you're going to hear from Brad Johnson, who I have loved working with from the budget office for many, many years. He also is the beloved staff of our fabulous Budget Advisory Commission. I saw Jay Ashford log in. I think we have some other members of the Budget Advisory Commission with us tonight. And just huge gratitude to Ed Gerber, who has been a fabulous chair of that commission for quite some time. So let us turn it over to Council Member Gibson McElhaney to talk about the values, the process, and just frame what the budget is going to be like this year. This will not be a typical year for the city's mid-cycle budget process. Council Member.
Well, good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, Oakland. Welcome to my home, and such a privilege and an honor to be with you, Madam Mayor, during your weekly town halls. Have this opportunity to share with our community the work that is underway for your municipal corporation and what we're trying to do. But just before I start talking about the budget, I did want to give a couple of shout outs and some appreciations. And just to really speak, if I can, for just a moment about the mood that we're all in this community. The COVID-19 pandemic is real and is having real impacts. I know that many of you out there, just like me and my family, have been really wondering about the future. And our own workforce and employees are concerned about our future now. It is so important that you know that the elected leaders, the people that you've entrusted with this great duty, have been working diligently to provide calm in this storm and to not think about it in the way of just reacting to what's happening, but to be proactive, as the mayor has begun to talk about in her own framing of the discussions that are in front of us. To anchor to some of what we know is true about Oakland, this piece of us that is resilient and tough and loving and diligent. So I'm really, really honored to chair the City Council's Finance and Management Committee as we begin to take a look at our budget for the mid-cycle review. Now, that's just normal. In any municipal budget, we set a 2-year cycle. And 1 year into it, we try to check our assumptions. How are we doing? Are we holding down on expenses? Did something go out of whack? Have we brought in more revenue than we anticipated? And what can we do with that to meet the public's needs? My colleagues and I have begun this in a very iterative, deliberative process with an amazing staff. If you didn't get a chance to tune in to find out about the people who have dedicated their lives and their profession to this city, please go back and look at the archive from the February 5th study session that we did, where you get an opportunity to see the professionals that are guiding your money, your investments, and our expenditures every day with great care. Mr. Johnson is one member of that team, and he's going to be talking to you next. And then you can go to this past Monday's finance and management meeting, where we have an in-depth overview of the financial conditions that we are responding to with the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I want to tell you that I'm not panicked. I know that seems strange. I'm concerned and I'm diligent and I'm studying a lot, but what I am is focused. In the midst of this storm, it is so important for us to not be panicked. And I can tell you some good things that have come out of this emergency. I've never seen us more united. I've never seen us more connected with the region or our mayor doing more at the state and federal level. I've never seen our federal partners as engaged in Oakland and looking out for Oakland. And there's continued advocacy that we need to do there. And I'll talk about that in a sec. So, what you can expect over the next few weeks. We're going to continue to see proposals, and the mayor will give us her proposed adjustments to the mid-cycle around May 22nd, at which time the council will deliberate, make any adjustments that we see, and continue with an ongoing discussion with our public. Our number one goal is to preserve our services and the workforce that provides those services to you as best we can. Before the pandemic, Oakland was wrestling with some horrible indicators. We understood, as the mayor has talked about, long-standing disparity, and that this generation of leaders wants to address. Before the pandemic, Oakland scored on an equity indicator where 1 is the lowest and 100 is the highest. We had 12 indicators where we literally scored 1. That was in the area of public health, our asthma rates among our young people, our homicide rate, the way that we have disparities with business ownership, and African Americans having 3 times the unemployment rate. This is what makes us thoughtful and diligent as we move forward in an equity lens and framework to make sure that government is working for those who need us most, and depending upon those who have some to give and contribute, both in terms of philanthropy, volunteerism, and ideas. So we want you to stay engaged, because not one of us is as smart as all of us. And before I leave and turn this back over to the mayor, I did want to say a special shout out to the class of 2020. You are our best and brightest minds. Whether you are graduating from high school or college or trade school or continuation school, graduation for you feels a little different right now. But we are celebrating with you, and we are so excited that you have leaned into this moment to complete your studies and to be prepared to step into the next chapter. We need your young energy, bright mind, and ideas now more than ever. But just to give you a context about how good you have it, class of 2020, just imagine if you were born in 1900. Your graduation day would be met with the start of World War I. You would graduate from college 4 years later at the end of that Great War, and you'd be facing the fact that 22 million people would have died in those 4 years. COVID-19 doesn't give us that level of challenge. Already, science is ahead of the game. We survived the AIDS epidemic here in the Bay Area, and we led the nation with resources and research and cures, and we continue to do that work. We remember the Loma Prieta, where the poorest of West Oakland in District 3 risked their lives, climbed up on a collapsing freeway structure to save the lives of passersby. This is Oakland. This is what we do here in the Bay. And this is what we will continue to do now and as we move on the road to recovery from the pandemic. Lastly, happy Mother's Day to everyone, especially those that are bereaved, as I am right now, who may be suffering without their children being present, but deeply in your heart. This Mother's Day, as Mother's Day are, can be tough. For you new mothers who are just beginning your journey, may you have a beautiful long life with your babies, and may they give you all the joy in the world. And a shout out to Miss Harriet. Congratulations on being Oakland's mother this year. Your love gift to us by creating beautiful memories at Woodminster has meant everything. I have the best memories of Torian and Victor in those seats. And so I am grateful to you, Madam Mayor, to join you in this platform. And I look forward to engaging with our entire community in the segment.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Gibson McElhaney. That was beautiful. Those are our values. That is how we will navigate this and so many other challenges. And a special prayer for you, Lynette, this Mother's Day. Bradley Johnson has been an amazing member of our city family, leading our budget process and really translating geeky budget stuff into understandable English. So Bradley, do your best to explain why this budget year is different from others and kind of what the public needs to know are the pretty serious constraints that we have when we have to solve budget problems like the one that we have that COVID-19 has caused by kind of cratering a lot of our revenues. Bradley Johnson, thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to start off by saying thank you to all for tuning in. I know the budget is a difficult and detailed thing that often doesn't get a lot of attention, but it is incredibly important for the health of our city, the city that we all love. Bear with me as I go through the next series of slides. Budgeting and city finance are important, but they're complicated. It's not incomprehensible, but be patient with yourself and be patient with me as we go through the next series of slides and we learn a little bit more about where our budget sits. Every 2 years, as Councilmember McElhaney had said, the city passes a budget. In the second year, before we enter that second year of the budget, we do what we refer to as our mid-cycle adjustment process. That is where we are right now. We're in the last quarter of the first year and we're moving into that second year, and so we are reassessing our mid-cycle budget. In a normal year, we would be seeing if things were slightly higher or slightly lower, making changes around the edges. Obviously, we're in a very different situation this year. Where does the City of Oakland's funding come from? The majority of the cities of Oakland's revenues come from taxes. We also receive income from service charges, grants, and permits, but taxes are by far our largest source. When you pay sales tax, for instance, or property tax, a small percentage of that comes back to the City of Oakland to pay for your local services. For example, for every dollar of property tax, which is what you're seeing on your screen, the City of Oakland receives roughly a quarter. Others go to other governmental entities like Alameda County or the Oakland Unified School District. Additionally, for every dollar that you spend, 1 cent of that comes back in sales tax to the City of Oakland. And again, there are other taxes that are levied that provide our public services. Tax revenues normally come into the city's general purpose fund. The city's general purpose fund is where we have the most control and most discretion. The city's general purpose fund makes up about 41% of the city's total budget. Next slide, please. But there's another roughly 60% of our budget that comes from other sources. Again, the city general purpose fund, mostly tax funded, and we can use that to support any legitimate governmental purpose. That 60% that's coming from restricted funds must be used in accordance with those funds restrictions. So as a simple example, we have a local amount of subvention that comes from the state gasoline tax. We're required to use that for transportation purposes. I always like to say when I'm explaining this, even to our internal staff, that the biggest difference between public finance and private finance is that money has colors. In the City of Oakland, money is not just green. We have blue money and red money and burnt umber money and aquamarine money, and we have to match burnt umber money with burnt umber purposes. So as we go through our budget, one of the reasons why we have complications is we need to make sure that we're using that 60% of our total budget in accordance with those restrictions, and they can be detailed and they can be difficult to understand, but we always make sure that we are in compliance with those. About 57% of the city's spending across all of these funds is spent on personnel. That is salaries, healthcare, benefits for city staff who provide our services. In the general purpose fund, that's that amount to your right, staff account for 76%, more than 3/4 of the general purpose fund. To a huge extent, the city staff are how we deliver services. You can't have libraries without librarians. You can't have recreation centers without recreation aides. They are the people who make our amazing services happen. Before we move to July 1st, the mayor must propose and the city council must adopt a balanced budget. That means we must, unlike the federal government, ensure that the amount of money we will take in is equal to or greater than the amount of money we plan to spend. We do not have the option, unlike the federal government, of borrowing and putting it on the national credit card. So there are some hard choices ahead of us because of that. Please move to the next slide. We are in the middle of an unprecedented economic contraction related to the COVID-19 crisis. On your the blue line on your screen shows the progression from the beginning of an economic recession through its recovery of the last recession, a recession we refer to as the Great Recession. The red line is the Standard & Poor's prediction for what we are experiencing now. And while that Great Recession was the largest contraction any of us had seen since the Great Depression, we are seeing a much sharper and more immediate drop in our current circumstance. This will affect our city's revenues. This will affect our ability to provide services. Again, this is the biggest shortfall we've seen, and over the next 14 months, it will require significant and swift action. We can't address this by tinkering at the margin. We must, like the pandemic itself, make sure that our action is decisive so that we can spare ourselves from deeper and more lasting reductions in the medium and long term. There's a lot of uncertainty regarding this crisis. We don't know the depth and duration of the COVID-19 related downturn. It's affecting every city across the United States, including our neighbors in California. The city is facing shortfalls in both its general purpose fund, which we talked about before, and its non-general purpose funds. Those shortfalls include $26 million this year in the general purpose fund, $54 million next year in the general purpose fund, and another $42 million next year in our restricted funds. Next slide. We want to start with some good news. The city has built over the past 5 or so years a rainy day fund of $31 million. That's planned contributions to and an existing balance of. That $31 million will be critical in cushioning the blow of the reductions in revenues we're experiencing. Other good news, because of those restricted funds and because not all of those restricted funds are economically sensitive, some critical services like housing programs, paving of our streets, roads, sidewalks, and our public libraries will not be dramatically impacted in this recession. And thanks to the incredible generosity of Oakland voters, we recently passed Measure Q, which will provide enhanced services for park maintenance and most critically for homelessness and to address the homelessness crisis that we were experiencing before this COVID-19 related downturn. Next slide, please. The bad news, like I said, we have 24 million, 54 million, and 42 million in shortfalls across the next 14 months. Collectively, this exceeds $122 million. This is the largest shortfall in such a time span in the city's history. And again, we will not be able to deal with it by tinkering around the edges. The city will have to take several strategies to address this incredibly large gap. Next slide, please. The city will be looking to freeze vacant city positions. And while that seems like it wouldn't have an impact, those positions would otherwise have provided services to our residents. We may be forced to release employees whose services cannot be provided during the shelter in place. We may be forced to reduce any non-essential spending, things that we would normally do to plan to improve our services in the future. We may have to suspend payments to our reserve fund, to our internal debt, and to our long-term medical and pension costs. We will be forced to use our rainy day fund. We may require concessions from our city labor partners, deferred paid increases, citywide closure days, or furloughs. And we may be forced to look at the sale of city-owned properties. Unfortunately, even once we tackle the financial problems of the current year and the next year, the COVID-19 crisis will continue to have effects on Oakland's economy and finances. We don't know the specifics. We are in unprecedented and uncharted territory, but we should all be prepared for hard future decisions. With that in mind, next slide, please. There are some game-changing things that could occur that we are looking forward to and hoping are happening. One is legislation at the federal level. The federal government, we hope, will pass specific COVID-related aid for cities smaller than 500,000 people, so we can continue to provide the expanded services related to this crisis. We hope the federal government will provide direct aid to help local governments overcome our revenue shortfalls. And we hope the federal government will lead an effort toward economic stimulus and recovery that helps all of our communities rebound and recover. We also have the opportunity to pass the statewide and Schools and Community First Act, which, if approved by the voters in November, would be a game changer regarding the city's revenues and would allow us in future years to restore many of the services that we are now looking at reducing. Our next couple of milestones, as Councilwoman McElhaney mentioned, by Friday, May 22nd, the mayor will release her proposed budget, and then the city council will deliberate as to what its next steps are, what improvements can be made to that budget. And again, we will adopt a balanced budget by the 1st of July. Our work does not stop there. We will continue to monitor our fiscal situation throughout all of next year and throughout this crisis. I'm going to take the opportunity now to answer 2 questions that were submitted online prior to this, the beginning of this town hall. One quick question was, what was Oakland's budget deficit before COVID-19 became an issue? And I will say that the city of Oakland, having been a 10-year employee of our budget office, was actually facing one of our better fiscal years. Over the last 10 years, we have tackled numerous issues, including becoming the first city in California to pass an OPEB policy, adding to our rainy day fund, addressing internal debts. We recently received an upgrade from one of our rating agencies, and we were looking at a budget where revenues were not dramatically out of line with our expenditures. And in fact, what we are seeing right now is the result of the COVID-19 crisis. We were on solid footing beforehand. Another question we're always asked is, where can you learn more about this budget? The city's budget website is oaklandca.gov/budget. The information from our prior biennial cycle is all there, and there's tons of great information and documents. I recommend that everyone pick up a copy of our adopted budget book. It's thick, but if you can take a little bit day by day, especially our budget basis section, you can learn a little bit more. As Councilmember McElhaney mentioned, on February 5th, we had an amazing sit down with the Finance Committee to go into the details of our budget. So if you're a budget wonk, you're a finance nerd, you want to get into the details of this, that meeting was an incredible resource, and there's a great 80-slide PowerPoint that goes into a lot of detail regarding the city's finances and where we sat. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Bradley. That was wonderful, and that was not too nerdy or wonky at all. Again, this. Thank you for just saying it like it is. This is literally the largest revenue shortfall Oakland has ever seen. $122 million over 14 months that we have to adjust for right now. But there you saw that good news also, that we have done a lot in the last 5 years to really transform our financial picture. So we have some tools and some cushion that we didn't have in the last recession to actually weather this one. I'd like you to put up the slide again for thought exchange. This is the time that you can send in more of your questions. If we do have time, we're dedicated to ending at 7:30. If we do have time at the end, I'll also try and get people who are just on the phone and don't have access to Thought Exchange. But again, scan the QR code, click on the link, or text 328-212-463. Text that number to 72855, and that will connect you with Thought Exchange. But in the meantime, while you're getting your thoughts and your questions in and you're ranking the questions of other people, I'm going to answer 4 questions I got ahead of time that people submitted. The first question, these have nothing to do with the budget. Can we please address the garbage issues around Oakland's homeless camps and the lake, specifically at the corner of East 12th Street and Lakeshore? Having a clean city seems like the basics. Show pride for where we live, even if your homeless garbage should be picked up. So the good news is that illegal dumping and cleaning around our homeless camps started resuming just on Monday. All of our illegal dumping work, our encampment management work, most of that has been suspended for 8 weeks. So if the city looks terrible to you, there is a reason. It is because our workers have not been working. But the good news is that starting this last Monday, City of Oakland crews went back to work to do garbage pickup. Also, starting this coming Monday, Waste Management is also going to resume their part of their contract to also pick up illegal dumping. And we've actually negotiated a service change with them to help us catch up on all the mess that has accumulated over these 8 weeks. Also, we will be expanding trash service to 41 more homeless encampments. And I also want to thank the Oakland City Council, including Councilmember Gibson McElhaney, for approving a $1.6 million homeless camp cleanup pilot. And so we are hoping that you're going to be seeing some dramatic improvements around our homeless encampments and around illegal dumping in general. But just know you haven't seen it for 8 weeks. That's why the city looks so terrible. Here's another question. If you test positive for COVID-19 but have no symptoms, should you quarantine yourself from others? We need to know how to stay healthy. The answer is yes. Yes, you need to quarantine yourself. COVID-19, even when you don't have symptoms, is extremely contagious. That's why everyone should be wearing a cloth mask. I have a beautiful one right here from Leslie Evers. COVID-19 is spread through droplets. Thank you, Lynette. We're all modeling. It is spread through droplets. Unfortunately, the virus can live for up to 3 days on surfaces. That's why we have closed down our swing sets, our play structures, our tennis courts. If you are in public, don't touch surfaces. You should not be using picnic facilities in our parks. You do not know what is living on them. I'm sorry that sounds gross, but that is the way it is. So yes, if you test positive, not only should you be isolating yourself, you should contact everyone that you have had any close contact with over the last 14 days and suggest they get tested and isolate themselves as well. If you are in need of a place to self-isolate, if you live in a very crowded living condition, please contact 211, make them aware of your needs. We have been working even with Airbnb to find places for people to isolate that need isolation, in addition to the 3 hotels in Oakland that Alameda County is running for our homeless population and other vulnerable folks. Please isolate yourself, absolutely. My third question is, what is the city doing to clean up sidewalks in East Oakland? Most stretches aren't, they're unusable. Kids and elderly are unable to utilize the sidewalk due to people drinking, doing drugs, and defecating. And specifically, they're talking around International Boulevard. So I will say that with regard to our unsheltered population, we have suspended our policy of removing encampments. It is the recommendation of our health professionals that part of sheltering in place, if we cannot get our unhoused residents into the hotels, the trailer program, any of our other safe shelters, that it is most healthy for everyone to allow them to shelter in place. I can say, though, that I just learned today that we have redeployed about 20 officers into East Oakland. They will be enhancing traffic enforcement. They have established a very visible command center on the 7600 block of MacArthur. So we recognize that East Oakland, sorry, Councilmember McElhaney, I know you're in the West, but East Oakland needs some additional attention right now. So please do reach out to the officers that you should see around East Oakland and let them know what your concerns are. I can tell you, and I recognize this is not popular with everyone, but I want people to know where I stand on this issue. We are not at this time using our officers to give out citations or tickets for violation of the health orders. People are very stressed out. They are without work. They are without money to pay citations. So our officers have been educating. They have been warning. There are some exceptions where there are large gatherings and sideshows we have had no tolerance for, but our officers are passing out masks, not tickets. Again, if things get out of hand, we might change that policy, but that is the policy right now. My last question is heeding what medical, and this is really more of a statement, and it's a very wonderful statement. I'm glad it was ranked high. Heeding what medical and scientific experts say, coupled with a spirit of common purpose among Oaklanders, will help a lot. A good understanding of the problem and teamwork are our best tools. I have to say that is a beautiful sentiment. Thank you for sharing it. I am very proud that unlike other parts of the country, the Bay Area has taken the advice of our health experts. We should all be proud that we were the first region in the country to shelter in place and that what we have done is working. The flattening of the curve, the reduction in cases and in deaths is stark compared to other parts of the country like New York, Louisiana, New Jersey, that did not take those same kind of protective steps. So keep it up. Don't stop. I know it is difficult and it is a tremendous sacrifice, but what we are doing is working. And the generosity of the Oakland community has been so heartwarming. Today, this last week, I also had a funders briefing thanking some of the major funders to the Oakland COVID-19 Relief Fund, which to date has raised more than $5.25 million, including individual contributions from hundreds and hundreds of individuals just like you. If you want to find out more about the Relief Fund, go to oaklandfund.org. And I did neglect to say, with regard to your question about homeless encampments and cleaning up around them, there is a survey, and I think we can have our interns post a link to that survey online. We certainly are asking people how they feel about our encampment management policies. I know the Life Enrichment Committee has been leading conversations about possible changes and how we manage our housed neighbors and our unhoused neighbors and keep our city both beautiful and also compassionate. So those are answers to some of your questions. Ivana and folks, are you ready with any additional questions that have come in about the budget?
We have quite a few questions. We're ready.
Great. I love talking about the budget. Share your screen with us, please, so we can see the questions. Oh, from Ken Lupoff. Ken asks, how can we protect to the extent possible funding for our parks? Our rec centers, when open, serve many of our most economically at risk. I want to start this one, but I'm sure that the council member will want to chime in. The good news is because you all voted for Measure Q, we will actually, despite this economic crisis, see an increase in park maintenance funding. However, Measure Q did not cover funding for recreation centers. And I will tell you that when we talk about freezing vacancies, one of the areas that we have, and Brad, you kind of went over this pretty quickly. I wanna make sure people truly understand this. It's both the good news and the bad news that Oakland currently has a fair number of vacant positions. The good news is that by freezing those vacant positions, we can avoid laying off our workers who rely on their City of Oakland income. The bad news is it does mean service reductions, and it is going to hit some operations harder than others. And I will warn you that recreation centers are one of those areas that have a lot of general fund funded positions that are vacant and eligible for being frozen. That is an issue. It is one that we are likely to see some reductions in recreation center staffing because of the huge deficit that we have to close. Other areas that you might see are civilian positions within the police department. There are a lot of vacant positions that are general fund funded. That is, again, what you learned about our budget, the restricted funds versus the unrestricted, the use of vacant position freezes. Those are going to drive certain areas more than others. Council member, do you want to add anything, or Brad?
Yeah, I want to thank Ken for the question, and I think this is where we're going to have to be in some really iterative conversations over the next few weeks. I go back to the issue around equity and what we have to invest in our communities where our young people have high needs, and where the equity indicators report of 2018 showed we were not doing well, particularly with youth being connected, juvenile arrests, and juvenile deaths, actually, quite frankly. So I will be fighting for those precious recreational centers to stay open, because through the lens of equity, government has to work for those who need it most. And our young people, particularly our families now, are going to need safe spaces for our young people to be, because otherwise I think we run the risk of seeing them to become disaffected, and then we have other downstream things, negative consequences that we have to address. But Ken, thank you so much for the work that you're doing with the Parks Foundation. And if you happen to be out there and you are a billionaire in the Bay and you want to do some good stuff, get some good karma, please consider donating to Oakland so that we can not only keep our rec centers open, but that we can expand the programming and do something fantastic for our communities in need. We welcome your money.
Maybe the interns can put up a link to the Oakland Parks Foundation website, because they specifically are a private partner to a public good.
Yes.
And again, just to remind you all, as the mayor, I get to propose the budget. As a council member, Lynette is going to have the final say on passing it. So I can talk to what I plan to do. As far as nonprofit allocations, when the city passed the budget a year ago, nonprofits who are in that 2-year budget, we know you're counting on those promises. And so I think that is probably an area that I would be very reluctant to cut, with one big exception. Voters passed an extra charge on hotel beds. It's called the TOT, or Transient Occupancy Tax, otherwise called hotel tax or bed tax. And that is really hit, as you might imagine, by COVID-19.
Yeah.
And so that there are a few institutions that receive a proportion of hotel tax. They are the Oakland Museum, Chabot Space and Science Center, the Oakland Zoo, our cultural funding program, and something that I look forward to seeing again someday, and that is parades and festivals. It's probably going to be a while before we have those again. Those are likely to see big reductions simply because that particular funding source is tied to hotel tax. Good news to your next question, the great paid should not be impacted. It is, thank you for passing Measure KK. That is the beauty of when you actually vote for things at the ballot box. It usually protects those revenues when times get hard. So the Great Pave should not be impacted. Councilmember McElhaney, I'm going to let you take the next question about sick leave vote.
Yeah, I believe that vote is coming to us at a special meeting on Tuesday. And I believe that that is being handled by the council president. And yeah, so I believe what's in the proposal now is for that to be, in some respects, retroactive. And so we don't expect that the fact that we had to cancel the meeting on Tuesday to have a negative impact to the ultimate outcome. Though we cannot predict, there's no Brown Act violations here in terms of what the votes will be. But I do believe that the entirety of the council is very much interested in supporting our workers and those who have been impacted by the COVID economic fallout.
There's a question that I am not sure I know the answer to. I think it's always important in forums like this to say, I don't know. Are nannies allowed to report to work if the parents are not essential workers? Now, remember, the definition of essential is getting expanded quite a bit. We have construction workers back at work. Nurseries are back open again. So let me check on that answer. I think, though, there's a nanny police. The important thing is that people remain safe. They cover their mouths with cloth. They practice social distancing, and they track their contacts. But let me get back to you. I do not know exactly the answer under the order. I know that daycare and recreation programs for kids of people that are having to work out of the home are allowed now. I think I talked about this a little bit in my opening, that there's confusion between local and state directives, whichever is more restrictive. And in our county, that's usually the county directives more than the state. Alameda County has been usually more restrictive, more medically conservative than the state and the governor. And so whoever is more restrictive wins. So generally that will be the county, but it depends on the particular issue. Councilmember McElhaney, you want to talk about foot traffic at Lake Merritt and some of the things we did last weekend to try and give the lake a break?
Listen, we really need to give the lake a break, y'all. We're very concerned about the traffic there at the lake. And to the mayor's earlier point, we don't want to move into an enforcement situation. We really want people to be socially compliant. And while we really appreciate and value the beautiful spaces that allow us to get out of our homes safely with proper coverings for ourselves, the kind of interaction at the lake is giving folks a lot of pause. So something just popped up on my screen. I'm sorry. I was like, oh, you guys still have me? Okay. So we've increased educational outreach. We've increased with the ambassadors around the lake. We want people from the same household to be able to enjoy the lake, and we want people to be socially distanced when enjoying the lake with others. But the kind of clustering and large gatherings is really not healthy. We really want you to live. We want you to get through this crisis. We want you to be safe. This is not big government trying to keep you from your freedom. It's trying to keep you alive and free. So please give the lake a break. We have other beautiful spaces, beautiful trails. We have lots of places, and the slow streets will allow for some different movement. But please, please, please enjoy other parts of the beautiful city and the beautiful bay. Do it at a socially distant and responsible way, and let's get through the crisis together.
I did not hear about any parties. I actually was out at the lake myself. We now are deploying ambassadors. We have signs. So, we are monitoring the lake closely. So no, I do not want to close the lake. I really don't. So the question, are you going to close the lake? That is definitely not my hope. Can you definitively express if Oakland will or will not enter phase 2 tomorrow? Phase 2 as defined by the governor? No. Although we did start this week with a return for construction work, nurseries, other outdoor businesses. And again, you have to check the county in this case, they are superseding the state's declaration. And at the beginning of the call, I talked about the 6 factors that we'll be tracking to determine when Alameda County can open up. It says, are you aware Woodminster musicals by Harriet are canceled this season due to the pandemic? That's what I presumed. It is very sad. That's why I'm glad we're honoring her, and I do not have an update on the recent theft. Councilmember McElhaney, or maybe this is for Bradley. How long do you expect the hiring freeze to go on for?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for putting out Schools and Communities First, Madam Mayor, that we can all be in on that correction. And if the voters were to approve that just taxation structure, we would expect that our monies would be back very quickly and we'd be able to resume service levels.
And Brad, do you want to talk about that wonky chart you showed at the beginning about when we might expect to recover from this?
Sure. I think when we were talking about a hiring freeze, the questioner may be asking about our very recent practice of restricting our hiring. That is, in large part, an effort on behalf of the administration to give both the mayor and the city council as many options as possible when looking at the next year's budget, so they can make the choices that are most effective, most equitable, most efficient for the city over the next year. So that's the initial hiring freeze. As we move into with an adopted budget, I imagine that will change. As it relates to the recession overall, I imagine next year we will be hiring positions selectively. Over the next fiscal year, there will be positions that become vacant. There will be retirements. We will have recruitments open. A selective hiring freeze is our best practice as of late. One of the things we learned from the last Great Recession was that we did not want to ever do a blanket across the board freezing of all of our hiring process, because it delays our ability to, when revenues recover, get services back to residents. So by having a selective freeze at the last stage of hiring, which is a little technical and detailed, it allows the city to be nimble so that the second we do see more revenues coming back, either from Schools and Community First, from the federal government, from a rebounding economy, we're able to move quickly to restore those services that are provided by our city employees to our residents.
And if you don't mind, I want to add to this too. I've been a City of Oakland worker for 21 years. I actually was laid off twice during the Great Recession. So it's very personal to me. And as mayor, I've worked extremely hard to put a huge number of financial controls in place. I personally wrote our rainy day policy. But I will tell you that I am willing to exhaust that rainy day fund, that $31 million this year. And again, I'm usually very fiscally conservative, but I am hopeful that what Brad showed, instead of that elongated U, that sharp V, many people predict that this will be horrible, but it will be relatively short. And so we did learn lessons from the last recession. Honestly, we still have been digging out of all the cuts that we made in the last recession. So we are really trying to balance how we make these cuts. But where normally I would not feel very comfortable zeroing out our entire rainy day fund for just 14 months, I actually am willing to take that bet, at least in my budget proposal. It will obviously be the council to approve, to help us get through this, to minimize reductions in services and to avoid layoffs. So I am hopeful that if that V goes the way that it says it will go, that we will be able to come back quickly. And then, as Councilmember McElhaney said, there are other potential game changers in the future. The next question is about ticketing. We have suspended certain types of ticketing. We are not ticketing for street cleaning. If you got a ticket because of street cleaning, please contact my office. Let me know. Some other types of ticketing we're still doing. but we are open to your suggestions about how we can make sheltering in place a little less miserable. So please talk to my office 238-3141 or email us at officeofthemayor@oaklandca.gov about your specific situation. It says the number of COVID cases went up. My understanding is the number of new cases did not go up, but of course the total number went up. We should expect to see that because we are improving testing so much, and we should even expect, the total number of new cases to go up. This is the first time that we have had like a number of consecutive days in Oakland where we have been doing more than 100 tests a day. Testing has gotten off to a very slow start, even in Oakland where we've had free testing available since March 20th. So we should see that, but I think the more important or illustrative numbers are the hospitalizations, and those are steady and slightly down. So I do think that we should be hopeful that what we are doing is working. It also says Oakland has the highest number of COVID cases. Of course we do. We are the largest city by far in Alameda County. So you should expect us to have the highest number of cases because we have the most people. Our rate is actually in line with the other cities in Alameda County. And honestly, the Bay Area is having a much lower rate of cases than other parts of California, particularly Los Angeles, Riverside, San Diego have been very hard hit. And then of course, California is doing a bit better than some of those East Coast states. So we are watching this. We are very aware of the racial disparities. I encourage you to tune in next week at my town hall next week with the public hearing on the racial health disparities task force work. So you can hear some of the very specific and targeted efforts that we're making to both prevent the spread of COVID, to get testing to people who need it the most and who often are left out of healthcare access. Here's a question. Is there any plan to fix the mural of Maestro Calvin Simmons on the underpass at Grand Avenue? I remember him when he was our beloved conductor. I will look into it. Of course, we need to honor him forever. And we are working on restoring the great Calvin Simmons Theater at the end of the lake. It says, will the county provide a list of differences between state and county restrictions? That is a good suggestion. We will pass that on to them and suggest it to them. I don't know, Lynette, you want to answer the question from Vincent? When are you going to fix all the sidewalks that are cracked and damaged?
Administration, a wonderful public works director, and Madam Mayor, you know these numbers because you're really wonky in terms of how many years out we've got these public improvements. But we want to thank the voters again for the measure that you led, Measure KK, that's giving us additional resources. And we will expect to resume that work as our workforce comes back. But we agree with you. We want to fix all the sidewalks and all the roads.
But know that if your sidewalk crack is caused by a City of Oakland tree, then it's our responsibility to fix. But if it is caused by something else, it is actually the responsibility of the private property owner. And the Oakland City Council passed a great law that also makes sure that sidewalks are fixed when homes sell. It's a good time to fix things up. And that is a new policy the council put in place last year that is really helping us accelerate fixing sidewalks that are so important for mobility and safety as people are walking around. There's a question about, is there a noise restriction for house parties? Yes, you can call the police. There's also, you can report it as a code violation. But yes, there are laws about how loud you can be. I believe it's after 10 o'clock on weekdays. I don't remember offhand what it is on the weekends, but it's 10, I'm pretty sure it's 10 p.m. Lynette, do you know that offhand?
I think it's 10 p.m. on the weekdays and then midnight or 1 p.m. I'm like you on the weekends. But yeah, I think they should, use the non-emergency number and make sure that you're reporting it. And if they're your neighbors, try a note or a card or be neighborly with one another. And often people will just respond to kind neighbors really engaged without having to turn to enforcement. So if it's a regular thing, try to reach out and be neighborly.
Good point. And 311 is still your kind of Fix-It Oakland phone number to report cracked sidewalks, loud neighbors. That's another good resource for people to know about. So, a question about participatory budgeting. It's critical to get citizen feedback. Lynette, how are you and the council going to be soliciting feedback from the public on this year's mid-cycle budget adjustment?
I believe we're going to follow a similar process. And I have to actually tell you, I think the Zoom and remote meeting is allowing more people to participate without the travel distance and the cost distance to get to City Hall. We are seeing an increase of people paying attention. And I know some people like to come and give testimony, but I really want to encourage people to reach out to your council members and to the mayor. The electronic mail gets read. Our mail is getting read, and we take feedback very seriously. You can also give feedback through our Budget Advisory Commission. Those are volunteers that are continuing to receive information, and certainly please follow this process and help us get there. I think, Madam Mayor, you and I share that in terms of really valuing public inputs. Our best ideas come from our citizens, and we're just here to serve and to try to bring our best thinking, but we certainly are informed and enhanced by the collective. So please stay engaged. We have the ability for you to give e-comments during the meeting so that you don't have to stay online for the Zoom call or use your telephone. You can leave comments right within our Granicus system. Our wonderful clerk, LaTonda Simmons, has made sure that we are electronically savvy even before the pandemic took us there. And you can still call. We are checking our voicemails. So if you want to leave a message for your council member, our staffs, or we are retrieving those calls as well.
And as a council member for the Port of Oakland, what's the effect of the cargo ships on our revenues, Benny?
So we have noted a slight increase in our cargo capacity and our shipping, but our revenues at the airport, and that is part of the business, are down close to 90%. So overall, the port's revenues are in trouble, and they are feeling the impact of the pandemic as well.
I'm very excited to answer the next question. It says 2 weeks ago, I heard it was an $88 million shortfall. Now it's $122 million. Is that the final figure? Will it get worse? So here's what's complicated. I've been saying $80 million everywhere. $80 million, $80 million. $80 million is the general purpose fund shortfall. The 42 million that adds up to 122 million, that 42 is from our restricted funding sources. And the way that budgeting works, if we can fix the $80 million shortfall, it probably will help us fix the restricted funding shortfall. So, Pat, do you want to explain that a little bit?
Sure. As we stated earlier, we have not just the city's general purpose fund, but a whole series of special funds that we're going to have to individually look at and make sure are balanced. I would say that we agree we need accurate projections. We're running numbers on a weekly basis. One of the always biggest trade-offs we have as staff is timeliness versus accuracy. You want the perfect number, wait till after it's happened, and I'll tell you what that exact number was. But if we want to have good planning, the best we can do is to continually reassess and re-advise our elected officials to make sure that they have the most up-to-date and most relevant information. So we are monitoring what the impacts of this are as we go week to week, day to day. Again, as the mayor said, that $42 million differential between roughly 80 million and 122 are our shortfalls in our non-general purpose fund funds. And those do provide critical, essential services to Oakland residents just as much as the general purpose fund does. So we'll need to resolve both series of funds and their issues in the next budget cycle.
But generally, the general fund, that $80 million is going to be the harder part of our budgeting process.
The general purpose fund, because of its flexibility, is going to be the more difficult of our funds to balance. Those non-general purpose fund funds may have reserve balances on their own. They may have ways where we can shift things around to make city services whole. We have we have some more tools in that space. But our general purpose fund shortfall is where we are looking at the most serious impact. And to say if we have had a surplus in the general purpose fund, we could of course use it to backfill one of the other funds. So the focus will be on the general purpose fund as it normally is, because that's our flexible money. That's where we can make the most dynamic and flexible choices to ensure that we're living up to the values that Councilmember McElhaney and the mayor are espousing.
And one thing that we forgot to point out when we talked about the different restrictions, even our general purpose fund, which we say is not restricted, it actually has some restrictions on it. So for example, voters voted to set a percentage aside for Kids First, the Oakland Fund for Children and Youth. These are grants that go out to youth serving organizations. The law requires us to set aside a percentage of that unrestricted money for that particular purpose. We also, in Measure Z, promised Oakland voters if we were going to collect Measure Z revenues, we would never lay off police officers. So we have restrictions with our police officers. We also were subject to an arbitration decision that requires minimal staffing for the fire department. So even that flexible money has a lot of restrictions in it. Yeah. Councilmember McElhaney, the next three questions are about potential council actions, the cannabis business tax and TOPA, which is being talked about but has not come to the council yet. Do you want to respond to those? Can you see them?
Yeah, I see those. I don't know that we can live in a space of regret around any of the decisions that we made in the past that made business sense or cultural sense for us. And this is with respect to the question around the cannabis tax cut. The council majority made a decision, a business decision, and now we'll be looking forward as we make the next set of decisions, because there's no clairvoyance here. It's just leaders trying to make our best estimation of how we have a diverse and inclusive, robust economy at the local level. The Tenant Opportunity for Purchase Act is going to be introduced, we believe, by Councilmember Nikki Fortunato Bass out of District 2. While she has talked affirmatively about this, and there have been some advocacy organizations that have been really pushing for it, we have yet to see the legislation introduced. And I believe that you will find that the council as a whole is taking into consideration, one, how do we preserve and strengthen existing programming without any more cuts? And we're looking at everything that we do through that equity lens. So I believe the questions here about will we hire new staff, will we implement this at the expense of other things, I believe all of that will be taken into consideration as we look at the budget adjustments. And I believe that we will do the hard work of making decisions that are intended, one, to protect our tenants from displacement, to maintain cohesion and a quality of life in our neighborhoods, and simultaneously make it so that it is not burdensome to existing owners or discouraging owner occupancy investments.
Thank you. I'll answer, what is the mayor's office doing to help ensure childcare facilities don't close doors permanently as a result of this pandemic? And I'll just say two quick things. One, through the COVID Relief Fund, philanthropic donations, we've raised more than $7 million. We have done some emergency grants to super small businesses. And if you go to our website, we actually have a video from one of the recipients, and they are a neighborhood childcare facility in East Oakland called Kishna's Kitty's Corner. So we wish we had more of these emergency grants. I'm trying to raise more money for them. We've been able to award about 180. We know the need is greater. The other just in general, I encourage you to also check out oaklandbusinesscenter.com. If you can put that up on the chat, lovely interns, oaklandbusinesscenter.com. That has a lot of resources for small businesses to help you keep going, including how to potentially get access to those SBA PPP forgivable loans. That's the Paycheck Protection Program. Those are forgivable loans if you use them to pay your payroll. And then also we love Kiva, K-I-V-A, kiva.org. They are doing zero interest, zero fee loans. They are loans, but you don't have to start paying them back for at least 6 months of up to $15,000. Very easy to qualify for. Again, no interest, no fees, no need for a credit score. These are crowdsourced loans, and these are the types of businesses that have been really successful. We've done more than about 850 Kiva loans to small Oakland businesses. So those are some resources. What happened to one-way round the lake implementation? So I thought that we were implementing that during my first town hall. Somebody asked about it. I thought it was a great idea. I put it to my director of Parks and Recreation. He asked for a little bit of time. He had his park ambassadors out last weekend, and he was going to analyze what they observed and get back to me. There are definitely people that think we should do it. There are also people that don't think we should do it. I like it, but I want to trust my professional staff. So I am waiting on a final decision from Nicholas Williams. You let him know the mayor is waiting for his decision on that. And I think, is that the end of our set questions? We have 7 minutes left. We could let people who are on the phone ask a question. If you are on the phone, I think you can press *6 to unmute yourself.
If folks have questions, they can unmute themselves on the phone by pressing *6.
I think you just muted everybody.
Folks can unmute themselves.
Long time. Someone named Diani.
We bought this house.
Hello, do you have a question? Do you have a question? Dennis.
Hey, Mayor, you had mentioned earlier about the hospitalizations being kind of consistent. Can you say a little bit more about that and why that's a good sign? And if you can say anything more about the PPE that's necessary. You were saying we're still a little bit behind there.
You know, honestly, I am trying to get more information from the county about how they're measuring. The goal is to have, for everyone, all essential workers, to have at least a 30-day supply of protective equipment at all times. I know the city feels like we have that available for our first responders. I am trying to get more information from the county. The reason that hospitalizations are probably better to track is we know that not enough people are getting tested. We know that people probably have COVID and they don't know they do. And so the number of cases is just a partial picture. But people know when they are sick enough that they need to go to the hospital. And so the number of hospitalizations, both in the regular hospital and also in the intensive care unit, is also a really good measure of really the serious implications of this disease. Most people who get COVID-19 do recover from it. We know that it really is our most vulnerable people, our seniors. If you're a smoker, if you have heart or lung conditions or diabetes, those are our residents that are most vulnerable. But those hospitalization numbers are going to kind of show us the most kind of severe cases at any particular time.
Thank you for that. And there was another question that came earlier about how can people keep up with our reopening of the city? So I know that the administration really takes the first hand at that. That's not in the council's purview, but bringing our city workers back and really kind of ramping back up to a full municipality. Can you speak to that a little bit, and how will people keep up with that?
Well, to be honest, we'll be announcing what city services are returning, and we've really tried to keep city services going. Many of us are working from home. We've also thought a lot about how we can allow our workers to work in safe conditions. But really, it is the county government that makes these decisions. The health officer, remember I showed you that picture, Gavin Newsom versus Dr. Erica Pond? Dr. Pond she trumps Gavin Newsom right now. So she is really the face of health. It is really her call to say construction can resume, restaurants or retail can resume. What we are doing though, and I want to commend our economic development staff, we are working with an economic recovery council, and we are trying to be ready. So our staff has been analyzing how can we potentially bring slow streets to some of our commercial areas that might need space to spread out and have socially distanced retail or restaurant operations. Can we help businesses put in parklets to expand space to conduct business? Can we wait? We already have waived permits. You need a delivery drop-off zone in front of your business. We'll come paint your curb for you. Like, we are all about moving quickly in this emergency. We're talking about permitless to-go windows, if that's something you need. We need creativity to figure out how we can get back to work safely. We do not have a cure or a vaccine for this yet. And until we do, we will not be able to resume life in the way we knew it. We are going to have to adapt, adjust, be creative, but we all know no one can do that better than Oaklander.
Madam Mayor, I just wanted to talk a little bit about why we see so many cases in Oakland, and I think you answered it perfectly with respect to us being a larger one. I will note that in my communities, we still have some churches who are worshiping. We still have some underground parties going on. We still have people who have not taken this really seriously. And I just really want to encourage you all. I've got people of all races and ethnic backgrounds playing basketball, either in private courts or jumping fences. Thankfully, we closed some of the courts in District 3 that were on city property. But we really need you to be careful because you may be spreading it, especially you're young, strong, and able-bodied. You don't feel it, or you feel it like a tickle when it really is much more deadly and challenging for those who are compromised or weaker. So we're going to continue to see the spread as people continue to violate the order. And the longer we do that, we're not going to be able to get ahead of the curve. So you all, please, please, please worship online, worship by phone, worship in your living room with your little family. But we've got to be able to keep the social distancing in place.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember McElhaney. It's 7:30. Brad Johnson, you have been doing the city's budget for all these years. Can you please leave us with some closing remarks as we conclude the budget town hall?
Sure, Mayor. I would say this. We have dealt with hard problems before. The city is at its best when our back is up against the wall and when we rally together to address something. If we put our minds together, if we stay focused, we stay diligent and stay attached to our principles in our financial and our other decisions, we can come out of this stronger and better than we were when we came in.
That is beautiful. And that is from one of our beautiful public servants that is just a joy to work with every day. Please, we just posted online a survey. Let us know how you enjoyed this town hall or you didn't. Let us know what topics or experts that you'd like to see at future town halls. This is one of these good things, I think, that has come out of COVID-19. These online forums that really make it easier for people to connect directly with their elected officials, get real-time information. Again, next week we will be back with the COVID-19 Racial Disparities Task Force, highlighting some of the work that's getting done right now on the ground to address the health disparities that we know have plagued Oakland and frankly the world for far too long and are definitely at play with this disease. And we will want to hear your ideas as well. Please join us next Thursday and every Thursday at 6 o'clock on all your social media channels or by phone. Call the mayor's office if you have any questions. We are answering our phones, even sometimes from home in our pajamas. And that's 510-238-3141. God bless all you mothers out there. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you for all the sacrifices you're making to keep your whole community healthy. We will get through this together. Even this budget is going to get done. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Good night.